Thank you, Professor Chow, and thank you all for being here, for coming out, for showing up. And those who are on Zoom, thank you for showing up on Zoom. I'm not sure where I'm looking for the Zoom, but glad you're here too, because I really want to be around people right now. I really want to be in community, and I live in Pavilion 10 on the lawn, so like many of you living around campus, my family and I are going through a tough period right now. So I honor you for what you're going through. I feel like we're going through it together, and I'm glad to be in a place with you so we can talk about. So I threw out my old talk. Some of it might sneak back in depending on your questions, and that was going to be talking about some of my work in conflict resolution. So I wanted to reflect with you and get your help and invite you to help me problem solve around leadership in difficult moments at times of crisis. So we're gonna, if you'll join me, and I had some jazz playing before to emphasize the aspect of improvisation. This is some Herbie Hancock playing. Let me go find something else to put on before I switch to my next slide. It's Miles Davis. There's a great story that Herbie Hancock tells in his memoir called Possibilities, which I think is a wonderful title for a memoir and wonderful theme for a life. He talks about when he was playing keyboards and Miles was playing trumpet, he played the wrong chord. And the way he describes it, terribly, terribly wrong. And anybody musicians here? Emily, Eliza, you guys play music? What's your name? Tara? What do you play? Trumpet? Oh, okay. You don't have it with you, perhaps, do you? Okay, too bad. But he talked about how you guys play keyboard? Okay, a chord that was so wrong that he's like, okay, Miles, who had a nasty temper, is going to fire me from the band. But Miles didn't see it as a wrong chord. He might have seen it as a wrong chord, but he took it in a whole new direction. Right? And improvisation, I think, and I love this story because it's about how do you take what you get, even if it's not what you want, and try to turn it into something more beautiful. So we're going to improv together through today's class, and I invite you to chime in at any time. And thank you, Professor Chow, for sharing my bio. I've had a pet peeve for many years, and it differs based on the city. In some cities, like if you go to D.C., where I lived for many years working for Senator Obama and then the Obama administration, oh, who do you work for? Or who do you work for? What's the sun around which you orbit? Or in other cities like New York, oh, where do you work? Or what do you do? I don't like that question. I'd much rather people ask me, what's important to you? What's your name? RJ. What's important to you, RJ? Family, fantastic. That's what I want to hear. Because it matters more than what you do, or what your major is, or what your GPA. Like, what's important to you? So let me tell you a little about me, and I'm going to talk about some of the key relationships that matter a lot to me, some of my core values, some of the experiences that might give you some sense of what how I've chosen to spend this scarce, precious resource towards life. Which organizations and people have I chosen to spend that with? What am I responsible for? Right? What do I spend my time worrying about? And then a question that I really love, and it's so much more powerful than, oh, how you feeling? Hey, how are you? Particularly now, that question feels so inadequate. But it's a question that comes from something called nonviolent communication, which has been a major influence in my work. And the question is, what's alive in you right now? So when we get to that point, I'm going to answer that question because I'm going to think about it at that very moment and try to feel it at that very moment. And then I'm going to ask you what's alive in you. So quickly on some of the core relationships, right? We took this picture on Saturday in New York City. My son Sumner is a junior at St. Anne's Belfield Academy. They no longer have an academy. St. Anne's Belfield School. You can recognize that guy with the tie. That's my son Miles, who's a junior at NYU Tisch studying acting. This is a beautiful green area. He actually lives in Stuytown, Peter Cooper Village. Any New Yorkers in the crowd? Okay, fantastic. So, I was trying to explain to my son, there's grass around, there's beautiful stuff. There's the ice skating rink, although they said the ice skating was closed due to unfavorable weather. I'm like, this is not unfavorable. This is 70 degrees. This is very favorable. And there's my wife, Marcia. So Sumner and Marcia you might see in Pavilion 10 on the lawn with me. Please come say hi. And as I said before about so glad we're together, if you just need a place to go because things are hard right now, it's hard for me too. Come on in. And if you're really ambitious and somewhat strong, you can play with my dog. This is Dante. He lives in Pavilion 10 with me. That's actually a little big bird that he got from Sherry Weston, who runs the Sesame Workshop. The university gave her an award, the Thomas Jefferson Medal in Citizen Leadership. And she liked Dante so much, she sent him a big bird who's had about 4 or 5 surgeries so far, but is still somehow staying together. And again, I'm talking about the relationships, things that matter a lot to me. I have a kind of complicated family. Here are our siblings. Everyone in this picture except Devika, who's the wife of my brother Damon, is a sibling. So I have quite a diverse crew of siblings, including my brother Glenn, who had his funeral on Saturday. He passed away October 27th, which is actually our grandmother's birthday. So laid him to rest. And here's my brother Shell, who passed away in 2011. This was long before 2011. This is probably about 1976, but I like this picture of us. I was in New York on Saturday because Friday night, my brother Shell, who's passed, you see in the beard there, that's his son who got married. So I've had an emotional swing of a week, and personally, from celebrating a wedding to spreading the ashes of my brother Glenn to coming back and having what's gone on here. So part of that is just, leadership and action. I don't have the chance to say I'd rather not deal with this right now, but I'm sure I'm not alone in feeling that way. This is my mom, who passed away in 2016. My mom was an artist, and she said to me she was very sick at the end of her life, and you got to be the artist of your life and paint your own canvas. And that to me is if you took nothing else away from our time today at all, and you remembered that you have a dean here telling you to be an artist of your life and try to take whatever you get, whatever materials you have, and create something beautiful, meaningful, original, heroically brave in the world, this will have been a time well spent. But that's Linda Solomon, my mom. And here's my adoptive dad on the left, Harold, and my biological dad, Stanley, on the right. Because, as RJ said, to know me and to care about who I am, you have to understand the relationships that matter a lot to me. And it's actually a big group. I've done a lot of my genealogy. This is if any of you have Ancestry.com, anyone done the genealogy stuff RJ has? Like, so you know the family trees you can build. Mine is so complicated that Ancestry doesn't know how to deal with it. There are too many different layers, so there's only killing this one father at a time. Like that's not complete. You got to show the whole picture. And here's where I appear to have DNA matches located at the moment. That's some of my relationships. The values that matter most to me: equality, excellence, peace, forgiveness, authenticity, compassion. There's an exercise I like to do in some of my trainings, and I'll talk a little bit in a minute about the organization I used to run, where I used to do conflict resolution workshops and trainings. And I have people tell me about someone they admire and why. So what's your name? Yasra. I'm putting you on the spot here, I apologize. think of someone you really admire. Could be a parent, could be a political leader, could be someone from history, be a teacher. Anyone come to mind for you?
My dad.
Can you say why you admire him?
He came to this country a long time ago with the American dream, and like it didn't necessarily work out the way he initially envisioned it to be, but he still made it work, and now he's got a family that's like stable, and we all love him. So I look up to him a lot for strength and support.
So, thank you for that, Yasra. Anyone here values expressed as Yasra talked about her dad? What's your name?
Virginia.
Virginia?
Yeah, my parents also came to the U.S., so I can relate to feeling grateful for their sacrifice.
But when you heard Yasra, so I love that you found a point of connection, very powerful. But were there values, is there anything we learned about Yasra as she talked about her dad?
She values connection and love and probably quality time.
And I heard perseverance, right? Things did not go well, but stuck with it, right? I heard overcoming obstacles, right? So, and I think that I often will start talking to people about who do you admire as a way to try to get, because sometimes you ask me, what are your values? And it's a hard question to answer. But if I ask you to name a person you admire, people actually light up. And if we did this for the whole group, and if I had the whole semester and not just this hour, I'd want to know who you admire, because I would learn a lot about you based on who you admire. And we'd find, to Virginia's point, lots of commonalities, lots of points of connections. And I've done this with the groups on many different continents, most notably in terms of conflict between India and Pakistan and South Asia. And people always admire their parents or their grandparents, often for, hard work, for perseverance, for love and kindness, for forgiveness. And if I would answer that I admire both things about both my biological and my adoptive father. Acceptance, forgiveness, justice, and equality are what I admire them for, and that's what I think of as my values. Here are some of my experiences. Professor Chow talked a little bit about my bio, a couple things I'll just add to it, right? I have the South African flag in this heart. When I was an undergrad at Harvard, was supposed to just be a summer of research between my junior and senior year, but ended up staying for the year and taking a leave of absence. And that was the year of the election of Nelson Mandela. So I was there from 93 to 94. And I encourage you very strongly, try to find an opportunity to live overseas, live abroad somewhere if you can make that work, because such a powerful and important year for me. Solomon Global is the company that I founded, a consulting practice to work on solving conflicts in the world. I think most other things were mentioned by Professor Chow. You see my picture when I was leaving the administration with, at that point, President Obama and my family. But these experiences, more than credentials, because they're not really credentials, but I'm proud to have invested my time, this scarce, precious resource we have, with these institutions and with the missions of these places. My responsibilities today, of course, are here as Dean of the Batten School. That's my primary professional responsibility. So the Batten School, for those of you who don't know, is celebrating 15 years this year. And I think of our work as being around teaching, research, and public engagement. The teaching is we try to develop ethical and effective leaders. We try to create knowledge to solve pressing global challenges and drive change to serve, be of service in a diverse and divided world. And do that within what I hope is a really inclusive community with a strong culture of service and impact. And our special sauce is the marriage of leadership and public policy. So it's a certain type of leadership to serve the greater good, and a certain type of policy that's really about making an impact in the world. And the two together, I think, is what makes us distinctive from all other schools of leadership or public policy, is the marriage and how we try to bring them together. I also have responsibilities for a number of boards, all for me very mission aligned, all nonprofit boards like St. Anne's and Montpelier Foundation, James Madison Montpelier Center for the Constitution, the Rodell Leadership Institute, which takes people from Republican and Democrat political leaders, brings them together for leadership workshops. I'll be going to Aspen, Colorado on Friday with one of my Batten colleagues to do a leadership resilience workshop for 12 Republicans and 12 Democrats. It's going to be very interesting. The World Federation of Youth Clubs, which basically the chair of this, he's here in Charlottesville. He was the chair of the Boys and Girls Club of America, and realized that globally we want to create that same sort of infrastructure for youth development. So the World Federation is designed to support global youth clubs. I was recently inducted into the National Academy of Public Administration. I am also a member of a few other organizations. But this is what my responsibilities. And what's alive in me right now? Sometimes we have to pause for a minute to really know. Enormous gratitude for all of you. And pride in this community, actually, for coming together. It's actually not what I expected to feel right now. I kind of, when I was trying to prep for this, I imagined I'd be either feeling sadness or something else, but actually it is an enormous sense of gratitude for your attention, for your being here. So thank you for that. What's alive in you right now? Take a minute to think about it. Try and get quiet within yourself. If you have a lot of chatter in your brain, see if you can let that go quiet for a minute. Anybody wish to share? Would people prefer to write it down, perhaps? What's your name?
I'm Jackson.
Jackson. Thank you, Jackson.
I think, in a sense, hope. Obviously with the events recently, there was a lot of that left us. But kind of seeing our community come together and start to try to move back to some sense of normalcy in the last 24, 48 hours, kind of shows the resilience here and what we can do.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jackson.
Mine's kind of similar.
Tell me your name if you would.
Charlotte.
Charlotte. Thank you, Charlotte.
I was gonna say I have like two kind of conflicting emotions. One I think is sadness because of like the kind of low energy, for lack of a better term, of ground right now. It just like feels everyone's hurt. And then the other side is kind of like you said, with how much we've been coming together, and that's kind of the only way we can get past all of this as a community reconciles with it, to be together as students and faculty alike.
Thank you. And I think that I suspect you're not alone in that sense of emotions that might actually not, go back to the music, might not feel like they're on the perfect wavelength, right? There's almost some dissonance perhaps between the emotions that makes them quite powerful. In the back there, tell me your name, please. Balin? Thank you, Ben, for sharing that. I've had a profound, I'll come to you in a second, Elisa. I've had a profound feeling, again, I talked about two brothers I buried before either of them hit 50. I just hit 50. And the sense that, make every second count. We don't know how much time we get. And you never actually get enough time to do all the things you want to do. So, second thing on top, be the artist of your life and be the artist now and as fast as possible. Eliza? Anger. Mm. So perhaps anger leading to action, to do something, taking action. Does I capture that right? Yeah. Emily?
I've been kind of working through some grief for the past few days, and I feel like today there's a sort of numbness associated
Hmm.
with that grief. Just because this isn't something I've ever experienced so close to me before,
Hmm.
and feeling all the pain of the people around me is kind of left me like kind of just sitting in all of it, and it makes me feel angry and sad, but also a little numb, just at the state that I'm in right now.
Thank you. I saw in the gray sweatshirt there. Tell me your name.
My name's Ryan.
Ryan.
Like, on the one hand, like, anguish, sadness, like, confusion, but also then, whether it's from, like, other people here, from my home, or, like, seeing schools around the country, sense of love and community,
Hmm.
of all people, really, about this issue, is also very powerful. As well, like, of other people's emotions, that sense of, like, that love and community to push forward, like, during these tragic times.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, one more. Yeah.
My name's Olivia, and I think, as terrible as it's always been, it's really taught me appreciation, I think, of the people that are with me. I have a friend who's on the bus, her name's Ryan, and I guess I never really, like, probably appreciated her as much as I should have, and I think seeing how close she was to almost being taken away has taught me how much she really means to me, and I've really come to appreciate everyone around me too, because everyone's been trying to be there for everyone, and they've been sharing so much love to help everyone through it, and so I've really been appreciating my community.
Thank you, Olivia. That's powerful. One of our colleagues, Professor Warburg, who some of you may take, he does one of the policy challenges classes that many students like. He's had some loss in his family, and he came up to me yesterday. My week is a bit of a blur of what days are, and just said, that when you feel that pain, just realize it's almost Olivia's point, like that's the flip side of the love you felt. Right, and the deeper that pain is, it's the sign of how much more you felt you lost and how powerful that love was. Whatever is alive in you now, pay attention to it. It's okay. There may be conflicting things that are alive in you. The anger thing resonated with me because I described it as, I want to punch someone and cry at the same time. And whatever you feel is okay. So, you heard about my weekend a little bit of going to New York for a wedding, then driving to Pennsylvania to spread my brother's ashes, to coming back here Sunday night being so exhausted. I missed the first several hours worth of text alerts because I'd fallen asleep being too tired. And I got up around 4 o'clock in the morning. And I had to figure out what to do. And I had without much time and still not being very awake, think about crisis response not just as a matter of theory, but as, so to the point about action, or what was I going to do, right? Because I, of course, was immediately shocked, like most of you, but did people count on me as the dean to do something? One of the really interesting observations from this whole thing, because one of the things we teach at the Batten School is you can exercise leadership from anywhere, that your role or position of authority isn't all that important sometimes because you can take leadership from wherever you are. But it struck me that in the middle of a crisis, role actually matters a lot because many of the eyes are going to turn to you to say, well, give us direction. So we're going to walk through this together. Hopefully you guys are okay with that. Processing how I tried to process what to do over the next, it'll be up to 2.5 days, including perhaps coming to a class, having no idea if people have any interest in hearing about it. So we're going to be leadership literally in action, improvisation in action as we try to figure this out. So I get up, I see Jim's, President Ryan's very painful email. What do I do? What do I provide to my community at 4 in the morning or 5 or 6? What do I do? What do you think is going through my head, or what do you think should have been going through my head? Because maybe it wasn't. You might have a better idea than what I should have done. Thoughts? Balin. Okay, so you said a bunch of things. Then I want to break them down a little bit. So one thing you talked about is thinking about communication that I might need to do. Another thing you said is like what's my family, right? So something about who might be the constituents or stakeholders or people within my ambit of responsibility. You also suggested that there may be a phasing. There are things you do first, and then there are things that I would get to later, right? So let's start with piecing through my constituents. Who am I worried about? So Balin talked about my family, right? What else? Who else am I worried about? 4 in the morning, just wake it up. You told me your name and I forgot already. I apologize. Ryan. Thank you, Ryan. Right. So there are the victims' families. You also mentioned students, right? I think my very first thing, probably frankly even before my family, because I assumed at 4 in the morning we were several hours before, was the students, right? Because as a parent of a son at NYU, I know who I don't see in New York, and I hear from far too rarely, right? So immediately the students, and I think, and also the students' families, because like it or not, know it or not, sometimes your parents call me too, and I know they worry about you and care more than you could ever know. Who else am I worried about? Right. So my colleagues, and even that can take a few different dimensions, right? There's kind of university-wide colleagues like the other deans, and then there's frankly the Batten staff and faculty. Right. Other constituents I may be worried about. Okay. So I'll call it other staff. Ryan, Balin, I see your hands. Let's see if anyone else wants to say something. Okay, that's you, and then I'll go back to you guys. Okay, so Charlottesville community. I assume that's yeah. And Balin had said something before that was very powerful about, who's in my control, who can I do something about. So I'm thinking about the constituents, but perhaps there's some I don't have much I can do for them, or I don't even have emails for them, or, Valen? I apologize, Valen. Okay, so police officers, and they will come potentially into the story in a few minutes, because I live on the lawn and I have bathrooms, but my neighbors mostly don't. And how are they going to safely get to bathrooms if they have to shelter in place? So police officers might be a good thing for the future for us to have on the lawn. Ryan, did you have something you want to add? Yep. No, I think that's, and I got a little access to that because I'm on the St. Anne's board. And again, that's a very narrow window of the Charlottesville. But they were also going to cancel classes and shut down. And I get a lot of the other chatter from other board members who are not UVA but are on that as well. Any other constituents you think might be on my mind or perhaps should be on my mind? Paula. Karis? And again, this is low risk, okay? So I don't want to be cold calling on people at a time or tough. So just think out loud, and it's totally fine. You can say no, you can pass, no pressure at all. Okay. No, it's actually a very salient point, right? Because I need to pay a lot of attention to what other leaders might be saying. So even if I'm not necessarily worried about them, my information gathering, which we'll get to, becomes very important to think about what other leaders are saying or doing. Balin? Alumni. You think it's low on the poll? Who do you think is the most likely to email and be all clogging my inbox if I don't actually send them some information quickly? Alumni are critically important. Ryan? Media. Very, very important. Media is critically important, both as a useful way to get information, potentially deliver information, and are quite active. So this is so students, faculty, staff, families, Charlottesville community, other leaders, alumni, media. This seems like a pretty good list. So, Valen. Okay, so I'm gonna put that with police officers. I'll just do first responders there, but I think you're right. So this is a sense of who I'm worried about. And let's talk about what are my priorities at this point. That's the who I may worry about. What do I care? What should I be caring about most at this point? Kate. I could not agree more. I think my sense is in crisis response, the very first thing is the safety and security, right? Before anything else is, and that's the question for these constituents, are they safe, right? And safety, there is literally, are they, protected from harm? And then that might get into other basic needs, like depending on how long a crisis goes, do they have water? Do they have food? Something I frankly had never even considered before this past crisis, do they have access to a restroom if they need? Right? So safety, security, basic needs. I think, so in my sense, that is the first priority. That's the first thing on my mind. And also something like, to Valen's point, I can't necessarily do all that much about it 4 a.m. in my bedroom. So what do I do next? Yes, Paula. Information gathering. Such a critical thing and so hard to do. But I think information is among the most critical things that leaders are desperate for in this moment of solving conflicts. What do we know? How do we get to know it? Is it reliable? Is it changing? Right? Because sometimes there is a lot of rumors that start swirling about what's happening and where it's happening, and you're trying so hard to get information. So fantastic point, Paula. Behind you in the brown shirt. Okay. So that's actually now the communication priority. Because here is something that people are going to be looking to me for. How am I going to, I assume most people have gotten at this point in the early morning, they've heard, if they're on the UVA, they've gotten UVA alerts. So just last week? No, Was it just last week? I did a program in Washington, D.C. We have a program called Batten which provides lifelong learning educational programs for people, for leaders all around the world. And we did a program about 35 people from about 25 different countries. So on my WhatsApp, people from all around the world have now heard about this. And again, but I didn't even list those people on my thing here because they're safe. I'm not going to worry about them later. Maybe later I'd need to get to them. But communication, certainly to students. Now, students have a lot of other channels, and I suspect the emails from your deans are not the first ones you open. Anyone want to suggest that it is your first email you open is from your dean? Okay, no one's raising their hands. But certainly, I hope my staff at least care a little bit about my emails. I won't ask Professor Chow how quickly the faculty get to, and maybe email's the wrong thing to do. How do I want to think about how to communicate, what to communicate, to whom to communicate? Is it constructive to send something at 5 in the morning, or is that just adding to people's clutter when they wake up? What time should I think about a message so that it might actually get read, right? So there's the whole communication piece. Any other thoughts on communication? What else do I need to do? Balin. Ah, yes. Mental health, emotional support, I think, are exactly where I get to next. Absolutely critical. And perhaps that might also depend on your constituencies, right? And I think, I could be wrong on this, right? You know, in many contexts, most people think about primarily physical safety first, because without that, it's hard to get anything else. But there may be some crises where they're almost on par with each other. And that's something I need to, I'll be reflecting on as I process through this. So I think mental health is critical, and we're not going to have time to go through each of these points in great depth. Anything else on my list of priorities that you can think of? And maybe we're not even fully there yet. Were you going to say something, Virginia? No. Okay, so that is a great point. I want to call that, you said a couple things there. At least I heard a couple things, right? One thing is, and I'm not going to make it on my list right now. I'll put it down below. I'm not sure it's next, but maybe it is. So one thing I heard was about like capturing, I'm not sure you guys can see over this, lessons learned. Like what can I learn? But the other thing else you also said might have been like just self-care. Like making sure that I myself can do all this, right? Were either of those what you were talking about? Okay, because I think those are, and I'll say that this last point, both are really, really powerful. The self-care one is, something I'm wrestling with. I'll get you in just 1 second, RJ. Right, so we did a community gathering in the Great Hall of Garrett Hall yesterday for Batten students, staff, and faculty. And I think it was very valuable and appreciated by members of the community. But Frank, tell me your name again. But frankly, Caroline, I think I needed it as much as everybody else did. Like I'm still in the process of grieving my own things and dealing with this like everyone else. So making sure the leader, him or herself or themselves, are able to continue to function and provide what people need provided. And the lessons learned is a really powerful thing. So frankly, I was thinking about constituents, priorities, and lessons that come out of this. So actually, I probably should have put this lessons. Perhaps lessons are a very important thing here. I do think there will be a time, and needs to be a time, for very careful thinking. And you guys might have things that you've learned that you wish we had done differently. And collecting those so that we can then put in place better procedures. But I want to push you to help me now, because we are in this now. So the last thing I was going to say here was start thinking about recovery. Right? We hope not to always be in the process of crisis. At some point, we want to get towards the stage of recovery. Forgive my pen here. And I wanted to invite you all to help me think about recovery. And Professor Chow is going to help me deliver some post-it notes. Yep. And the question I'd love you to very quickly answer, give me one idea, any one idea, and just, if you, just share a piece with your neighbors. Give me one idea that you think might help this community to heal and recover. And if that's too big, give me one thing that would help you to heal or recover. I want to crowdsource some ideas here, and I assure you, I will read each of these, not necessarily out loud today because we're running out of time, but I will spend time with these because I want to provide the most effective leadership that I can to the Batten community and the broader UVA community. Feel free to say karaoke on the Pav 10 garden. That's a really wonderful idea. We're working on it. Any other ideas are also welcome, or even perhaps what I'm doing tomorrow night, to which you are all invited, especially those who are online, a fire pit and roasting marshmallows and making s'mores in the Pav 10 garden. If you're in town, starting about 7:30, you're all welcome to come there as well. Other ideas are good too. If you want to say I'll bring the graham crackers, I'll take note of that as well. But then you got to put your name and your email on it. Otherwise, you don't need to identify yourself. Those online, Professor Chow probably is already sending you a note to invite you to put something in the chat. And let me invite you, as soon as you're done, if you want to come and stick it on the board right here. What a better pen I found now. So I can take a nice, good picture of this. Or if you want to hand it to me as I walk by, I can stick it up for you, unless you want to be physical and active and get some exercise. Olivia, you're going to use the delivery service? You may put these up on there. Thank you. And certainly your ideas don't need to stop now. Give me something now, but if you think of something later that you want to share, you can send it to Solomon@virginia.edu. Thank you. So, one of the thoughts before was this feeling of anger or strong emotions moving towards action. And I actually think it's a very important part of healing and recovery, is looking towards the future, right? Because it's so easy, and the gravity is such a powerful force. The gravity pulls us to the past oftentimes. One very important aspect of resilience is finding ways to look towards the future. And the best way to do that is to think about what actions you can take. So I think these actions you are suggesting here are a helpful aspect of healing. And we will find some way to share those. Is that possible? Take a picture and share them to the class? I also will read them. And if you want to come up before the end of class or talk to me about it, you can. This is what we as a group of deans sometimes do. Figure out, we're on the Zoom, what can we do to be supporting each other? This is improvisational leadership in difficult times in action with regrettably, often terrible and changing and conflicting information. You saw even the press conference, finding out during the press conference, that the suspect had been apprehended. Information changing. Communications. I'm sending one note out to staff saying, please be there tomorrow to support our students. And the university's chief operating officer sending out a note to staff saying, staff can work on a modified work schedule tomorrow, don't need to come to the office. Different messages. Not uncommon in a bureaucracy. Mental health support, something I think we're trying to get into place. At the Batten School, we have an embedded CAPS counselor for our students, but I think the need now exceeds what the supply is. How do we meet that better? Thinking about recovery and making time to take some lessons. This is what I'm doing and processing now. Hope you don't mind my turning this class into a chance for me to think about that with you. I'm happy to take any questions in the last minute or two we have now, but I'm also happy to stick around for anybody who wants to talk to me afterwards. Any last thoughts or questions? Comments? Well, then I'm going to just do something that for me is just fun. And here's some of my mom's paintings and different definitions of art. And perhaps while I do this, Professor Chow can hand out some stickers that you can have. So in a workshop, I often ask people to think, what does it mean to be an artist? If I say be the artist of your life, what does it mean to be an artist? And what is art? These are just different paintings that my mom did throughout the years. Haven't used this presentation in a while, so that logo you see in the back is my old company. It's not the new Batten School logo, in case you're wondering. Some of you may have, if you in the basement of Pavilion 10, we have our graduate teaching assistants have their office hours, but we also have a lot of my mom's artwork hanging there. And I have an exhibit about the history of Pavilion 10, both the enslaved who built it and the enslavers who kept them. I like this one. All art is autobiographical. The pearl is the oyster's autobiography. This is from much earlier in my mom's life when she was far more realistic in her painting. We have our art so that we won't die of truth. But maybe art is a lie that makes us realize the truth. It's Pablo Picasso. Filling a space in a beautiful way. Thank you guys for your time today. Please heal and recover well. Please reach out to your classmates, to your professors, to your deans, and to your broader community. We love you. We care about you. We are here to support you. And thanks for your attention today.